Welcome to the Livfiit Listens podcast, a safe space of growth, personal development, and overall wellness with your host, Olivia Catania, diving into the realms of all things health, conscious living, mental expansion, and much more. This podcast is designed to help you evolve into your best self and live fit. Let's get into the show. Well. Guess who it is? I'm sure some of you guys, when you opened up whatever app that you stream your podcasts on, you're like, it could not be a new Livfiit Listens episode. It just couldn't be. I dropped off the face of the podcast earth. I did. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. This was not premeditated whatsoever. I do think it just was kind of happenstance / a reflection of where I'm at mentally, eternally, soulfully, spiritually, which we'll get into in this episode. I really fully did not have any intention of taking time off, or else I totally would have been on here, been like, hey, like, you're not going to be hearing from me. I got busy when I was in Bali, and it just wasn't, since I was traveling from place to place, I wasn't really in the headspace, and it wasn't really calling me to sit down and like record an episode. And then when I'm on the move a lot, since I was traveling from place to place, I wasn't creating the time, I should say, to sit down to record an episode and to edit it and all of that. And then once I got back from Bali, it was also just kind of, I've been going through a lot of personal things, if you will, again, which we will get into. And I just really wasn't having anything that was really on my heart that I wanted to share. I wasn't getting any sort of pull or call to show up on the podcast. And I kind of was waiting until I had this message that was coming through that I really wanted to share, because again, this really is my passion platform. And I like to just share things from the heart that I'm going through, that I'm working through, lessons that I've learned that I think are going to be helpful for you guys, and just really speak about what I'm passionate about and what I think will help. And so I really don't like to force those things. So anyways, nothing was really coming through for me of things that I want to talk about. And so I kind of was just taking that as a sign to just like chill, go through this introspective period that I've been on. So again, we're going to get into all this, but here's my formal hello. It's nice to be speaking with you guys again. I hope you guys are happy to see another episode from me. Quick recap, because it's been months. I did just want to touch on Bali really quickly. I do have a few vlogs up on my YouTube channel if you want some more, like in-depth updates and insights on what Bali was like. I personally absolutely loved it. I was there for a full month, and I just, when you just resonate with the place, that's how I felt there. I just loved the energy. I loved the space. I loved the flow. It was my first time ever going to Asia, and it really sparked my curiosity and interest to travel throughout more of Southeast Asia. The people were so kind. I loved learning about the culture and their faith. It was so fascinating to me. Everything, like, I thought everywhere I went was super beautiful, and again, super intriguing and super interesting to me. And there was just a really cool balance of like culture, faith, learning about new people, but then also really beautiful areas. I really liked the tempo of living there, the whole 9 yards. So I definitely would love to go back. I could also see myself living there for a few months' time as well, because everything is so affordable there, which I love. I think that the flight is worth it. Here's your sign. Like, I think the travel time from the US is completely and entirely worth it. And that was like truly one of the best trips of my life. So with that, the Bali retreat was also amazing. I feel like, how could it not be? Like, we're in a beautiful place. You're surrounded by really amazing, like-minded people. And so that went really well. I loved the itinerary that we had in Bali. I also loved the workshops that we did, because we were able to get formal workshop space. So we had this beautiful big yoga room, literally right on the water with these big open doors. Such a blessing. We did our meditations in there, our journaling workshops, and we had our group workout in there, which was absolutely incredible and amazing. So that actually takes me really quickly. I don't want it to take up too much of the episode, but I did launch another wellness retreat. If you guys have been interested and have been wanting to come, now is another chance for you guys. So the next retreat location is in Oaxaca, Mexico, which is very exciting. It honestly was not on my original radar, but I ended up really liking this itinerary and liking just the vibe. And I feel like Mexico is a really great place because it's still Central Time Zone. It's still close to the US, but it's still outside of the US as well for a sense of like international vacation. So that trip is going to be running from July 10th to July 15th. It's a 6-day itinerary of 2025. So tickets are now available. I have a few more early bird spots. If you are interested, there's a few more early bird spots where you can get $150 off of your ticket. And similar to the other trips, your accommodation, all of the activities that we're doing, all of the workshops that we're hosting, there's breakfast included every single day. We have some lunches and some dinners. There's transportation, private transportation for us all throughout the duration of the trip. So all those things are included in the trip price, and the ticket price, but your flights, any travel insurance, and the rest of the meals are not included in the ticket price. So again, I will have the trip page linked down below in the show notes as well, just so you can take a look at the whole itinerary that we're doing. We have boat tours. We're going to be snorkeling, swimming, going on a day tour to some beach towns. There's a surf lesson, which you guys know I've been literally waiting to include this in a retreat, so I'm so hyped. So that information will be linked down below. Leading me into my gratitude, I do feel very thankful that I have made it to my 25th year of life. So if you don't know, my birthday was June 26th. I'm recording this on July 2nd. So I turned 25 a few days ago now, coming up on a week. Actually, tomorrow will be a week. And it's safe to say that I'm mentally unwell. No, I'm going through a quarter life crisis, and I just uploaded a YouTube vlog as well, where if you can go watch that if you want to see more in depth of just like my raw emotions of just how I've been feeling. I just have been really struggling mentally, really struggling with being in my power, really struggling with having a lack of clarity and feeling insecure about my future, feeling like I'm constantly not doing enough, like I'm not, smart enough, capable enough, that I'm not experienced enough, that I'm not this and not that enough. And so I just feel like my mindset has really been all over the place. And I feel like I've really been going through, like I said earlier, like a big introspective period. And it's been frustrating because the things I'm struggling with are things that I already know the advice that I need. I already know how I would give advice to someone else struggling with the same thing. But a part of me truly believes that like we have these lessons dished out to us for a reason at a certain time on purpose for a purpose. And with that, I do also feel like sometimes there is a timeline of feeling in the dark in that lesson in order for it to actually be impactful, if that makes sense. So it's like, even if I feel like I know the mindset that I need to have, the belief systems that I need to be embodying, even though I feel like I could quote unquote shortcut my way to healing through this lesson, I do feel like I've been going through this for the time period that I have been going through it in order to make that this lesson that I'm going to be coming out on the other side with even more impactful, because I feel like anything that is given to you instantaneously doesn't have as much value, right? It's not worth as much. Like the things that we have to work hard for or things that take a long time to acquire are so much more rewarding and impactful and powerful. It's just kind of like the nature of it. And so I do feel like I've been going through these hard times to really thoroughly be able to understand and feel what it feels like to be in this state of mind, for a bunch of different reasons. And one of them that I always think about is that I'm going to be way more empathetic on the other side of this. I mean, even now, to people who have been feeling the same way as me. And another thing I have also been feeling is just this immense pressure as well, since I'm 25, to like feel like I'm making the most of this decade and like really trying to set myself up for the life that I've always dreamed of, because for some reason I feel like I have this ticking timeline until I'm 30, and I just feel this pressure to like set myself up for success now and do all these things now. And it can just be really overwhelming, and it just can feel very daunting and almost disheartening in a way, because you're like, how the heck am I supposed to get to the top of Mount Everest when I know the mindset that I need to have and that we all need to have is just focusing on building it brick by brick, one day at a time, rather than thinking you need to build this whole entire house, this huge mansion, all in a matter of a few years. Like, obviously life is always ongoing and it's always going to be this evolutionary process. And the biggest thing, again, since I did vent in a YouTube video about all this, it helps me as well, because sometimes I am my own biggest critic, which I know we can all relate to. And like sometimes the things that I'm struggling with are just all always like in my head. And, you know, since I didn't feel this enough and that enough, then I didn't feel encouraged or in my power or feel motivated, or I didn't feel inspired to like come on and talk about anything on the podcast or whatnot, or show up in the same way on YouTube, because I just don't have the same confidence in myself because I'm so in my head, when really just sometimes like getting myself to sit down in front of the camera or to get in front of the mic, like I love this stuff lights me up. I do feel like it's such a big part of my purpose. And I know that because of the flow state I get when I actually really sit down and create and show up for you guys, again, whether that's on camera or on the mic. And when I was talking in that YouTube video, I, you know, as I'm venting, I'm like starting to say things that I'm comforting myself, the advice that I need to hear. And like these other downloads come through to me of like how to work through this hard time and challenging times that I'm going through. And it made me feel inspired again of like, I want to show up. I have to show up. Like there is value in this, and being open about this and sharing this with the people who watch me and listen to me is going to be helpful and is going to be valuable, because since I'm going through it, that means someone else is in some capacity. And even if I just say a one-liner that maybe is applying in your life in a totally different area, like that is the point of all this. That means that, you know, what I'm saying is helping in some capacity, and that's the point of everything. Like that's when I will, you know, feel fulfilled. Anyway, when I was venting in my YouTube video, I had some really good advice and perspectives that came through that I really wanted to share with you guys in this podcast. I was talking in my head, I was like, this would be a really good podcast episode. So like I'm saying, a lot of things that have been coming up for me recently are feelings of being less than, of not being in my power, of not feeling like I'm enough, of not feeling like I have enough value to offer, right? And to me, when I reflect and I play the why game with myself of why do I feel that way, where is that coming from? I feel like that's really coming and stemming from a place of a lack of self-worth, of having a low self-image, and a place of essentially low self-confidence, which kind of goes into that self-image and everything. And something that I've really been realizing and learning and digesting is the concept that if you're wanting to up level in your life in any capacity, if you want to up level to your next level, which is going to be different for everyone, of course, you need to understand that you must release your limiting beliefs if you want to move to your next level. They just quite literally cannot come with you because they would not be aligning in any sense. And of course, just to take us back, kind of the true explanation of what manifestation really means. Manifesting doesn't mean, oh, I'm saying I'm going to have this and poof, it comes into my life. Manifestation really is a very clear, tangible, kind of concept in life where it's essentially saying the thoughts that you have are what evokes the emotions that you have and what you feel, and how you feel is what motivates and inspires you to take certain action, and the certain actions that you take are what accumulate into your life. And furthermore, the thoughts that you think are all just compilations of the belief systems that you have. So that's why at the core of what our quote unquote manifested reality is our beliefs, because our thoughts stem from our beliefs, which our thoughts then create our emotions, and our emotions then lead us to taking actions. And that accumulation of our actions, or I should say the accumulation of the results of our action, are what create our life. And so obviously, if you think about someone in business, right? If they have really insane limiting beliefs or fears that they're never going to make it, if they're thinking those thoughts, then feeling those feelings of fear, of lack, of not feeling good enough, what action do you think they're going to take? Do you think that that person is going to take the action of taking a risk on their business, or going all in, or going and pitching themselves to this really important investor if they don't believe in themselves? No, they're not going to think there's any point in it. Whereas opposed, if you see another person in business and they know that what they have to offer is something of value, they know that they have a good business idea, or they know that they are worthy and that they are capable of creating a lasting impact, and they go up to, those belief systems, that self-image, that's what's going to inspire them and make them feel equipped to go up and pitch themselves to that investor and actually go take action on a huge opportunity that has the potential to really make a huge difference in their life and up-level their life. And so it totally 100% goes back to the belief systems that we have then get translated into the actions we take, and therefore the reality that we create. And so I think a lot of times for me, when I'm really going through another season of purging is kind of what I want to describe this as, because I do feel like healing and personal development, I've heard this somewhere, where it really is like an onion, where, you know, we think maybe me when I was 22 years old, going through all my personal development and reading all my personal development books and like really working on my mindset. Sure, maybe I quote unquote healed those first things that came up to the surface, but now I'm 3 more years into life. I'm 25 now. I've experienced more. I've had more time, right? And so now there's more layers of me that have come to the surface. There's different parts of me that I didn't quite know back when I was 22. And so new things have cyclically risen up to the surface for me to clear. Just like, again, how you're peeling back layers of the onion, the deeper you go, there's more layers to it. So it's not just this one thing at face value. And so as you're going through life and the more things are exposed to that need to be healed, all of these are surfacing because you're going deeper. You're going deeper in your life, and you're being asked to root even deeper to your higher belief systems, to a higher sense of self, to a higher self-image, so that you can then move to a higher level. Because if you're carrying all these fears, if you're carrying all these limiting beliefs, if you're carrying all these traumas with you, those are going to, no question, no doubt, those are going to be what are blocking you from creating the life of your dreams. Those are the only things that do ever block us. And you know, it's so common and easy for people to think, oh no, it's just I have bad luck, or no, I don't ever get dealt those opportunities, or no, that person is just she's more set up for success because she has way more resources. All of those are just excuses. All of those are victim mindset. Don't get me wrong. Everyone has been handed a different hand of cards in this lifetime, 100%. But at the same time, it's more so about what you do with the hand you've been dealt. And for sure, you may have a different starting point, but everyone has their own version of trauma that they need to work through in some sense or another. And you constantly just saying that good things don't happen to people like you, that is you just fully falling victim to the cards, the hand of cards that you were dealt, rather than learning how to actually play them. Or, you know, in a more literal sense, learning how to actually work through these traumas and using what you have been through to your advantage, because in your pain is where lies your purpose. And in your pain is where there's all these lessons for you to learn to be a more evolved individual, a more empathetic individual, a more experienced individual. Everything is always happening for us in some sense or some capacity. And it's so important to really, really remember that and keep that at the front of your brain, because as soon as we just fall victim, that's where you're completely stripping our power away. And the thing is that nothing and no one is responsible for any lack that you have in your life, because it always comes down to us having the responsibility to change it. And so if you feel like you were at a lack for any which reason, it takes utter, accountability, responsibility, taking radical responsibility and accountability for yourself, your thoughts, and your actions. Because if you want different, you really do have the capacity to create different. But in order to create different, you need to move, think, and act differently, or else you're going to keep creating the same life that you've always been. So if you're constantly still living from those same places of fear, if for me personally, if I'm continuing to act from this place of low self-image, if I'm continuing to act from a place of like, no one cares anyways, how do you think that's really going to impact how I'm showing up, how I'm speaking, on this podcast? It's totally going to reflect through, because it all starts within you. If I don't believe in myself, if I don't feel like what I'm saying is worthy, if I don't feel like what I'm saying is impactful, if I don't feel like I'm a worthy and impactful human being, no one else is going to think so either. So if I want a different reality going forward, if I want to be able to up level to my new level, I need to release those limiting beliefs, because they quite literally cannot come with me if I'm trying to create a new reality, because these mindsets are why I am where I am right now. And so if I want something different than where I am now, I need to have different thoughts, mindsets, and belief patterns. And that takes up leveling. If I want my life to up level, I need to start by up leveling my belief systems, my thoughts, my emotions, my self-image, all of that. And I also want to be clear, because I do think that this is totally normal and common for people to feel like maybe in your healing journey that you're going backwards, right? And I think we hear this all the time, that healing is anything but linear. And this is something that I personally really need to hear, because I also tend to be really hard on myself. And that's also something that I'm also really noticing, that why I don't ever feel like enough is because I'm so hard on myself. Nothing I ever do is good enough for myself. And so I'm also really working on healing that that as well. That's a topic for a different day. But what I do really need to hear is that healing is not always linear. And I think for me, especially, again, I think a lot of people watching this podcast very into personal development. Some of you guys may be even hooked on me in the first place because you guys first found me via gym content. So you like progressing in your fitness journey. And so it's very common for people into personal development and up leveling. You get addicted to that feeling of like each time I'm quote unquote getting better, or I'm up leveling, or, I'm just getting better and better and better. And sometimes it can be really disheartening to feel like in your healing journey, you're going backwards. You're like, wait, but I felt like I already learned these lessons. I feel like I already implemented these lessons. And you may have, right? Like I definitely know I did when I was in my early 20s, like 22, 23. It feels crazy saying that because I still feel that same age. It's just trippy for me because everything is the same. Like I'm in my same space. I'm still doing the same podcast, but it's like same thing, but 3 years later. Just time is so trippy when you think about it, because it's like I could be doing this exact same thing in this exact same spot exactly 3 years ago right now. And like, that's just insane. I should see where I was exactly 3 years ago today. Anyway, what was I saying? Of course, now I lost my train of thought. That healing is not linear. Yes. So it can feel very disheartening. And for me, I have felt very disheartened. Like, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going backwards. Like how that's just like a shitty feeling, whether that's in your fitness journey or whatever it is. It can feel super disheartening to be like, wow, I worked all this way to get here, and now I feel like I'm 10 steps backwards. But I think something that's really important for everyone, kind of what I touched on early in this episode, that healing is a very cyclic thing. And what may have been at the surface for you to heal at the face value 2 years ago that you feel like mastered and you're good and you're XYZ and you're like, yep, I don't deal with struggling with self-love anymore. I don't deal with struggling with self-confidence. There may be another round that comes up, and no, my point isn't in saying that like your whole life you're going to be struggling with self-love. I'm not implying that, but I am saying it may come to you in cyclical rounds as you get deeper and deeper through this process, because each year we're getting to know ourselves deeper. We're going through more life experiences. There's different triggers that we're encountering for the first time. I'm also in a very healthy relationship, the first one in my like adult years. So I've been getting a lot of triggers and a lot of reflections for me to grow through that I quite literally could not have tapped into by myself when I was single at 22 years old. And so my point in saying this is just that things are constantly evolving and changing and shifting, and you may have different stimulus, is kind of how I want to describe it, where you are in this point in life that are causing different things to arise, to come to the surface. Different things are coming into your awareness that you weren't always aware of that take healing. And so it's not that you're going backwards. It's just this kind of cyclical nature, because we all know you're not the same person you were when you were 22. Again, you've experienced more life. You've gone through more things. So many different things have happened. So even if you feel like you're in the same place, you're actually not. You're just learning different. You're learning maybe overarching the same umbrella lessons, but in a different way, in a different context. And you have to look at these things as opportunities for you to deepen into those belief systems that maybe you first sparked when you were 22. You're going even deeper into what it means to fully embody that belief system. And also you're learning how to root even deeper, more unapologetically into those belief systems as well. So I just always see adversities. I always see challenging times as opportunities to simply deepen into the belief systems that we need to have to go to the next level. And I think another thing that also disheartens a lot of people is they're like, wait, I wanted to have a high sense of self-image. Now, why are all these feelings of low self-image coming through? This just means I'm never meant to have a high sense of self-image, or I'm never meant to actually have high sense of self-love if I'm continuing to feel all these, feelings of self-hate. Like clearly I'm just not meant to ever feel self-love. It's just not meant for me. But that's so far from the truth. You're looking at it from the wrong perspective. Like you need to flip the side of the coin of what you're looking at, because it's not that these things are coming up, feelings of lack, a lack of self-worth, of a feelings of I'm getting ahead of myself, of feelings of lack. Let me restart again. Okay. The reason why these feelings, I'm getting too passionate and sped up. The reason why these feelings of a lack of self-worth, of a lack of self-love, of a lack of feeling like good enough in anything, the reason why those are coming through are not to say that it's because you're never meant to feel the positive equivalent of those things. It's because you are currently holding on to those belief systems and you need to let them go in order for you to actually feel self-love, self-worth, and feeling capable. It's the same thing of how off and on cannot exist at the same time. A light switch cannot be off and on at the same time. You cannot be also up and down at the same time from ground level. This is the law of polarity. So you can't be holding on to all of this self-hate and expect to be experiencing an abundance of self-love if you're still holding on to all of that self-hate. Right? It doesn't make sense. There's quite literally no room for it. So that's why when these things come up, you're like, oh my gosh, I really been wanting to work on this part of myself, right? I really wanted to work on my self-love, or I really wanted to work on my self-confidence, or I really wanted to work on feeling worthy or feeling like I'm good enough. If you're constantly like, no shit, the universe is going to give you things to expose, or else these feelings are going to keep living dormant in your subconscious. So you need to have a trigger in your life. The universe is going to give you a trigger to expose these feelings of a lack of confidence, of not feeling good enough, right? For you to then learn how important it is for you to cultivate feelings of high confidence, for you to develop feelings of being good enough, so that then you know how to acquire those feelings, embody those feelings, and then carry that new belief system with you going forward. So you just have to understand all of this is to show you your low frequency belief systems that aren't serving you to come to the surface so that you can heal them, so that you can release them, and so that you can then create room to replace them with a higher set of belief systems / they come to the surface to make you aware of the low frequency belief systems that you are holding onto, so that you can have the awareness of them, reprogram them, and then actually get yourself into an alignment and become an energetic match and a magnet to the life that you're wanting to live with the corresponding belief systems that you need to create that life. And another thing, I mentioned this in my YouTube video as well, there's a podcast called Spiraling Higher. I don't listen to it, but I know I follow the girl Sam on TikTok, but she's one of the hosts. I think maybe both. I don't know. One of their names is Sam, of the podcast hosts. And I followed her on TikTok. I don't see a lot of her videos, but I remember that her podcast is called Spiraling Higher. And I think that it is really the perfect depiction of what healing really is, especially going back to what I was saying about healing isn't linear. Because if you think of a spiral, especially spiraling higher, you're not spiraling, meaning you're just going around in a circle, repeating the same day, repeating the same healing, not moving anywhere, not making any progress. You still are making progress upwards, right? You're not in the same place down in the basement. You're moving up a few floors, even if you might feel like you're still in the same place in the circle, if that makes sense. So for example, let's put a dot. Pretend I'm holding my hand up. I know the people listening aren't going to be able to see me, but if you're watching on YouTube, you can see this. At the top of my fingertip, I'm holding my finger up. Let's say this is point A, starting point of the spiral. If you're spiraling upward, I go in a circle, and then I stop again when I'm in alignment with the top of my pointer finger. I'm still right above it, but the key to that is that I'm above it, right? I guess if you're looking down on it, it looks like I'm in the same place where I was, but if you look to the side of it, I'm up one story, I'm up one level. And so that's kind of the concept of this spiraling upward in regards to healing. You may feel like you're at the same starting point if you look from above, but if you look from below, you see that you're up 6 stories. And that's personally where I feel like right now in my life, again, just to give a tangible explanation, like sometimes I'm frustrated with myself because I'm like, I know these lessons, I've gone through these lessons, I know these concepts, but for some reason it's so hard for me to apply them and embody them. It feels like I'm at the same starting point at the bottom of the spiral, but really I'm just directly above the starting point of the spiral, but up 6 stories, right? So I think that's a really good visual to have if you're ever feeling disheartened with your own healing journey, or maybe you're struggling with self-love again, or you're struggling with body image again, or you're struggling with confidence again, or you're struggling with feeling worthy enough or good enough to go after your dreams, or to maybe start your own business, or to ask for the raise at work, or to try to advocate for a promotion for yourself, whatever it is. Just know that there's nothing wrong with you if you feel like you're in the same place. You didn't do anything wrong. You're not failing. You're not at all. Like I promise you, if you are still feeling inspired to listen to this podcast, and you're showing up for yourself today by clicking on this podcast episode, and that is worthy of something, and that is something to be proud of yourself for, and that is something that is proof for you to know that you are not throwing in the towel, that you are continuing to keep showing up and trying, and that is the best possible thing that you can do for yourself. And even though sometimes you can feel like you're in this really dark period where everything's uncertain, you don't know how to move forward from this, you feel like there's no hope, just know each day that goes by is a day closer to understanding the lessons that are going on, and it's a day closer to you discovering clarity. And with that, I also want to say, don't feel like you have to necessarily wait for some aha moment after all this. Take the time to turn around behind you and say, okay, this is where I'm at. This is what I'm feeling. Fully accept what you're feeling. Allow yourself to vent about what you're feeling so you can totally understand where you're at, and really do your best to see the power that's in this space right now where you are, and do your best to see what the universe is trying to show you in these circumstances, because it's very easy in challenging times to say, well, it is what it is. I'm screwed. The universe is out to get me. When in reality, it's totally up to you for you to choose how you're seeing the situation. And there is always opportunity to see the good in the lessons, or how this is benefiting you in some sense or another on the back end of things. For example, if you feel like, no, Liv, actually I'm looking at my situation, there's not one good thing about it, I beg to differ, because no matter what it is, you're going to come out of this a more empathetic person, a more experienced person, a more resilient person. You've learned more of what it means to persevere through situations simply just by going through it. Okay, simply just by going through it. If you didn't do anything tangibly to try to make a solution or be this big grandiose save the day, even if you don't do any of that, you just by going through this are going to be more empathetic. You're going to be a more resilient person. You're going to learn what it means to truly persevere and stick it out through a situation. And that in and of itself is something amazing and beautiful and worth going through, right? So there's so many different ways that you can look at situations. And that is pretty much my big thing with this podcast episode. And just also the huge fact that you must release your limiting beliefs in order for you to get to your own next level. And I feel like that's what I'm personally really going through right now at the start of my 25th year in my quarter life crisis, is that I'm struggling with feeling worthy. I'm struggling with my self-confidence. I'm struggling with being in my power. And it's because the universe is calling me to root even deeper because again, clearly I have way more of those things than I did 5 years ago. Before I had this podcast, I didn't have any sort of social media platform. I wasn't making $1 on social media. I had no business registered. Livfiit was still merely a hope in my brain, a vision in my brain, and a hobby. So clearly I have cultivated more self-love, more self-confidence, a greater sense of self-worth and confidence back 5 years ago. But now it feels like I've hit rock bottom again, but really it's only because I've unlocked a new level above me that's waiting for me, that has made me feel like, oh my gosh, I am really struggling with self-worth, confidence, and feeling worthy. And so now it's really, this is just an opportunity for me to up-level those beliefs in those areas, have a greater sense of self-image in order for me to step into my next level and be the person that I need to be the version of me that I need to be in order to step into this new phase of life that is waiting for me. So I hope that you are able to apply this in your own life. I'm just using me as an example right now because it's just something I'm really actively going through, but I'm sure that you guys can definitely apply this either to yourselves. Maybe you're going through a very similar situation, or you can apply it to another area in your life or a piece of your life. So that's everything for this podcast episode. For the affirmation for today, it is, every day I am seeing the lessons my higher self is showing me to step into my next version. Every day, I am seeing the lessons my higher self is showing me to step into my next version. Last thing, I posted this on my Instagram story. I read this in my YouTube video, and I'm going to read it to you guys here in the podcast because, again, shout out Jordan. She came on one of my one of my Costa Rica retreats and my Bali retreat, and she had sent me this excerpt that was perfectly in beautiful divine timing, and I love it, and I want to leave it with you guys here in this episode in hopes that it touches someone as well. So it says, one of the characteristics of having, this is like an excerpt from a book that she's reading. One of the characteristics of having a big destiny is that things don't work out for you right away. There are delays and unexpected times of quiet. The plans you had for your life are unraveled, and you're asking to conceive of a new vision, one grander than you had the capacity to imagine in the first place. These rest periods are actually life's way of giving you an opportunity to work on yourself, to invest in who you want to be, to heal, to release. These times are not just to be tolerated or waded through, but used. They are quiet gifts that will lead you to the path you are really meant to be on. I love that. Everything is constantly working out for you for a purpose, on purpose. We just have to change our perspective to see it. And once we see it, that's when we can really hone in on that, take advantage of that, and really have everything be working for us. So I love you guys so much. This felt really good to be back on the mic, back in the studio. I really hope this was impactful for you guys. Again, if you want to join me on my next wellness retreat, we're going to Oaxaca, Mexico next July. The trip page is linked down below. I'm sending you guys so much love all the time, and hopefully I will see you in my next episode. I don't know when it will be, but let's cross our fingers that we're back in action and that it will be next week, considering I have something to talk about. So I'm sending you guys so much love, and hopefully I'll see you in the next epi. Peace out.